Hello and welcome to K News. This is Hardik Trivedi. Let's have a look what is happening in India and in the world. Taliban insurgents launched a complex attack on Tuesday morning against a military base in eastern Afghanistan, killing at least 3 people in protection forces, an official said. 5 other forces were wounded in the attack, said Abdul Rahman Mangal, a spokesman for the governor in Paktia province. A suicide car bomber targeted the entrance gate of the base in the provincial capital Gardez. The 2 gunmen started shooting at the Afghan security forces, Mangal said. Security forces killed both attackers in a gun battle lasting almost 10 minutes, and the area is now under control. A Taliban spokesman, Zabiullah Mujahid, said the group claimed responsibility for the attack in Gardez. The attack comes after Afghanistan's president appointed 46 members to a Council for National Reconciliation, which will have final say on whether the government will sign a peace deal with the Taliban after what are expected to be protracted and uncertain negotiations with the insurgents. The negotiations were envisaged under US Taliban peace agreement signed in February as intra-Afghan talks to decide the country's future. A series of delays have hampered the start of the negotiations, which some had expected to begin last month. Accusing President Donald Trump of poisoning the nation's values, Joe Biden condemned violence at recent protests Monday and blamed Trump as the battle over who's to blame and who can keep Americans safe emerged as the sharpest dividing line for the campaign's final weeks. Biden, in his most direct attacks yet, accused Trump for accusing the divisions that have ignited the violence, delivering an uncharacteristically blistering speech and distancing himself from radical forces involved in altercations. He said of Trump, he does not want to shed light, he wants to generate heat, and he is stoking violence in our cities. He cannot stop the violence because for years he's fomented it. Biden also tried to refocus the race on what he has been its defining theme, Trump's handling of the COVID-19 pandemic that has left more than 180 Americans dead after a multi-day onslaught by the president's team to make the campaign about the violence rattling American cities. Biden himself has largely remained near his home at Delaware to prevent the spread of the virus, but he stepped out in a new phase of his campaign on Monday, in a speech in Pittsburgh and a brief stop at a local firehouse, set aside on Monday, where his lofty appeals about the soul of the nation, a staple of his usual stump speech, replaced by an urgent call for action, and his fierce accusation that Trump was a toxic presence in this nation for 4 years, who was poisoning the values of this nation and poisoning our very democracy. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi said that the India-China boundary is yet to be demarcated, due to which there will always be problems, and the 2 countries should implement the consensus between their leadership to not let differences from escalating into conflicts. He also said that China is ready to manage all issues through dialogue with India. Wang, who is currently on a tour of Europe, made the remarks during an interaction at the French Institute of International Relations in Paris on Monday. In response to a question on China's relations with India and Japan, the minister did not directly refer to the latest provocative move by the Chinese military in eastern Ladakh. India-China relations have recently attracted the attention of all parties, Wang said. The boundary between India and China has not yet been demarcated, so there will always be problems of this kind. We are ready to manage all kinds of issues through dialogue with the Indian side, he said. Differences should be managed and controlled, and in particular, differences should not escalate into conflicts. I think that various departments of the two countries should implement this important consensus, Wang said. India and China have held several rounds of military and diplomatic talks in the last 2.5 months, but no significant headway has been made for a resolution to the border war in eastern Ladakh. The situation in East Ladakh continues to remain tense, with the Indian Army matching the heavy weapon posturing of the PLA on Monday, after pre-attempting China for moving into the dominating heights south of Pangong TSO on August 29 night. The people familiar with the development said the situation is very tense in the Chushul area, with the PLA fully in aggressive mode and showcasing heavy caliber weapons to force the Indian Army to give in. The Indian Army has also matched weapons and blunted the Chinese offensive, both at the south of Pangong TSO and Rezangla, by counter-offensive mounted by the Special Frontier Forces, said a senior military officials. As of now, both the armies are matching each other in strength, with the Indian Army present in the strength to repel any Chinese aggression along the LAC in Ladakh. The Indian counter-offensive has ensured that its troops are now dominating heights along its side of the LAC and monitoring the Chinese movement. The situation is dire and the possibility of escalation cannot be ruled out, as Chinese PLA, under instruction of Beijing, is going all out to push the Indian Army, said a second senior military commander. There is a glimmer of hope for peace if the meeting between Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar and his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi happens on the sidelines of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization ministerial meet in Moscow. But any further escalation from the PLA will end up scuttling any diplomatic initiative. Countries with a significant active spread of coronavirus must prevent amplifying events, as opening up without the virus being under control would be a recipe for disaster, the World Health Organization said on Monday. WHO Director General Dr. Tedros recognized that many people are getting tired of restrictions and want to return to normalcy 8 months into the pandemic. The WHO fully supported efforts to reopen economies and societies, he told a news conference, adding, "We want to see children returning to school and people returning to workplaces, but we want to see it done safely. No country can just pretend that the pandemic is over," he said. "The reality is this virus spreads easily. Opening up without control is a recipe of disaster. Explosive outbreaks have been linked to gatherings of people at stadiums, nightclubs, places of worship, and other crowds where the respiratory virus can spread easily among the clusters of people," Tedros said. "Decisions about how and when to allow gatherings of people must be taken with a risk-based approach in the local context," Dr. Tedros said. The trade ministers of Japan, India, and Australia agreed Tuesday to work toward achieving supply chain resilience in the Indo-Pacific region, following reports that the three nations are looking to work together to counter China's dominance on trade. The ministers instructed their officials to promptly hammer out details for an initiative to strengthen supply chains for launch later this year. According to a joint statement, Japan's Hiroshi Kaijama, India's Piyush Goyal, and Australia's Simon Birmingham attended the video conference on Tuesday afternoon. the statement said. They also called on other countries in the region with shared views to participate in the initiative. The three nations are seeking to build stronger supply chains to counter China's dominance as trade and geopolitical tensions escalate across the region, Bloomberg reported in August, citing people in Tokyo and New Delhi with knowledge of the matter. Along with the US, Japan and Australia and India are members of the Quadrilateral Security Dialogue, or Quad, a loose grouping for national security consultation. A senior US diplomat said on Monday that the US would like to start formalizing that grouping as the base for a border security alliance in the region. Former President Pranab Mukherjee was on Tuesday cremated in New Delhi with full state honors. Earlier in the day, leaders from the entire political spectrum paid their last respects to the senior Congress leader at his Rajaji Marg residence. Prime Minister Narendra Modi, President Ramnath Kovind, Vice President Mr. Venkaiah Naidu and Defence Minister Rajnath Singh were among the leaders who visited Mukherjee's residence this morning. Former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, Rahul Gandhi and members of the Congress party were also seen paying tribute to the veteran leader who served as the president of the country from 2012 until 2017. The 84-year-old died on Monday at the Army Hospital Research and Referral in the capital's cantonment area. He had been admitted to the hospital on August 10 following a fall at his home. He underwent a surgery to remove a clot in his brain. He was since then in coma and was on ventilator support. After the leader's health condition declined in the morning, his son Abhijit Mukherjee later in the evening announced the news of his death on Twitter. The government has announced a 7-day mourning period for the Bharat Ratna awardee. The national flag will fly at half-mast at all buildings throughout the country through the week. It's time for a short break. We'll join you in a short while.
Live the Ken lifestyle with Ken Star.
Welcome back to K News and thank you for watching. Let's continue the streak of news. The government on Tuesday informed the Supreme Court that the loan moratorium period can be extended by 2 years as per Reserve Bank of India circular. That came a day after a moratorium on loan repayments allowed to lenders due to the coronavirus pandemic ended. The central bank had allowed banks and other financial institutions to offer a 6-month moratorium to all existing individual and corporate term loan until August 31. Solicitor General Tushar Mehta, representing the central government, requested the top court to allow the centre to discuss the matter with the RBI and the Bankers Association and arrive at a solution on issue of waiving interest on interest during the loan moratorium period. There are more issues involved. GDP is down 23% and economy is stressed, he said. The top court posted the matter for Wednesday as it did not get the affidavit by the center stating its stand. The Supreme Court had last week sought the government's stand on waiving interest on loan repayments during the moratorium, said it cannot hide behind the RBI. Congress leader Rahul Gandhi led his party's attack on the BJP-led central government over the 24% fall in the gross domestic product, the worst in independent India's history, saying the economy's destruction began with demonetization in 2016 and that every policy decision thereafter has been erroneous. India's economy suffered its worst slump on record in the April-June quarter, with the gross domestic product contracting by 23.9% as the coronavirus-related lockdown weighed on the already declining consumer demand and investment. Recovery is also uncertain as India is quickly becoming the global epicenter for coronavirus infection, stating that the BJP-led central government has ruined the Indian economy. Congress leader Priyanka Gandhi Vadra said that 6 months ago, when the lockdown was announced, Rahul Gandhi had spoken of an economic tsunami. Taking a dig at the Prime Minister in the tweet, Congress chief spokesperson Randeep Surjewala said, Modi ji at least now accept that what you hailed as master strokes were actually disaster strokes: demonetization, faulty GST and lockdown. The contraction in the gross domestic product is the sharpest contraction since quarterly figures started being published in 1996 and worse than what was expected by most analysts. Chief Economic Advisor K.V. Subramanian, however, has said the economy is experiencing a V-shaped recovery after the lockdown eased. The Supreme Court on Tuesday gave the telecom companies 10 years to repay adjusted gross revenue, with run into about 1.6 lakh crores. While reducing the time period, the bench headed by Justice Arun Mishra issued following directions. The telecom firms will have to pay 10% of dues by 2021 due to COVID-19, and the rest can be paid in installments by March 31, 2031. In the event of default, the company will be punishable for contempt of court, the bench said. On the point as to whether spectrum can be sold by the telecom companies facing proceedings under the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, the bench asked the NCLT to decide whether spectrum can be subject matter of resolution process. The top court had in October 2019 delivered the verdict on the AGR issue for calculating government dues of telecom companies such as Vodafone India, Bharti Airtel and Tata Teleservices as license fee and spectrum usage charges. Later, the Department of Telecommunications had in March this year moved a plea seeking permission for staggered payment in a time period of nearly 20 years for the telecom companies. But the court had earlier observed that the request of telecom companies seeking 20 years for the payment was unreasonable. On August 21, the top court had directed DOT to apprise it the basis of spectrum sharing done by telecom companies and how much is the liability of the sharers. The top court asked the DOT secretary to file a specific affidavit apprising it. Unfazed by the continuous rise in the COVID-19 cases, particularly in the last few days when the infection crossed 60,000 mark daily, Union Health Minister Dr. Harshvardhan on Monday expressed confidence that the country's coronavirus count will be under control by Diwali this year. Vardhan also expressed hope about having a vaccine against COVID-19 by the year end. Inaugurating the Nation First webinar series organized by the Anant Kumar Foundation, he pointed out that the country was much ahead in tackling the pandemic. The COVID-19 will significantly come under control by the Deepavali this year. The lenders and common people effectively worked together to fight the pandemic, the minister said. But the virus has taught us a certain lesson. It has taught us that there has to be new normal, and we need to be more vigilant about it, more cautious about our lifestyle, Dr. Vardhan added. We are not lagging behind anyone else in the world in our efforts to contribute towards the vaccine against COVID-19. In India, we have about 7 to 8 vaccine candidates, 3 of them in the clinical trial phases and rest in the preclinical trials. And by the end of this year, we hope to be able to get a vaccine against COVID, he said. The minister said there was only one lab in February, which has now increased to 1,500 nationwide. And out of this, more than 1,000 are government labs. The country is conducting about 1 million tests per day, which is way ahead of the target, he said. He observed that compared to earlier, there is no scarcity of PPE kits, ventilators and N95 masks. After suffering huge losses during the recent anti-terrorist operations in the Kashmir Valley, unidentified terrorists on Monday targeted an army convoy moving from Baramulla towards Srinagar but failed to hit the target. At least 7 civilians passing through the area received injuries after the grenade hurled by the terrorist missed the target and exploded in the middle of the road near Abdul Azad Bridge area of Baramulla. CCTV footage of the spot revealed the grenade had exploded seconds after the last vehicle of an army convoy was passing through the bridge. Large number of civilians were also seen running in different directions after the grenade blast. It is after a long gap terrorist handlers have attempted to directly target an army convoy in Baramulla. All the recent strikes were aimed at either CRPF or Jammu and Kashmir police personnel. According to a Jammu and Kashmir police spokesman, the grenade attack on an army convoy was reported in Baramulla around 1:15 p.m., in which 7 civilians received injuries on Monday. All the injured were shifted to the hospital for the treatment, the spokesperson said. Petrol has become costlier by rupees 1.65 per litre over the last fortnight as fuel retailers have raised its rates to rupees 82.08 since August 15. The prices of diesel have remained unchanged over the last month at rupees 73.56 a litre. Initially, retail prices of both petrol and diesel remained frozen for the first 15 days of August at rupees 80.43 and rupees 73.56 in Delhi. Petrol prices started increasing from August 16 with 14 paise a litre hike that day. Thereafter, petrol rates increased regularly. Over the last fortnight, petrol prices were revised about a dozen times, even as international rates did not fluctuate much, as benchmark Brent crude remained in the range between $45.4 per barrel and $45.9 a barrel. An oil ministry official said diesel and petrol prices in the country are linked to the international prices of finished products, and not crude prices. The government has no role in the daily revision of petrol and diesel rates as they are deregulated products, he said, requesting anonymity. The government had deregulated petrol pricing in 2010 and diesel in 2014. State-run fuel retailers Indian Oil Corporation, Bharat Petroleum Corporation Limited and Hindustan Petroleum Corporation Limited declined comments on the matter. In a sharp response to Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman's Act of God comment on the impact of coronavirus on the economy, currently Congress leader P. Chidambaram said today, do not blame God for a man-made disaster. The former finance minister, in an interview to a day after a 24% drop in the GDP signaled India's worst economic contraction on record, also called the government's relief package a joke. Mr. Chidambaram questioned Chief Economic Advisor K.V. Subramanian's claim after the shock GDP data that the country had suffered due to the lockdown and would see a better performance in the coming quarters on the back of a V-shaped recovery in various sectors. I don't know if anyone takes the Chief Economic Advisor seriously. When is the last time he had a conversation with the Prime Minister? He has been predicting V-shaped recovery for months. Then he saw green shoots when the Finance Minister said it. Where are the green shoots? Mr. Chidambaram asked. According to the senior Congress leader, every data point that Mr. Subramanian relied on had been refuted by the report of the RBI. That's all for now. Keep watching K News. This is Hardik Trivedi taking your leave. Be alert, be positive, be safe.